Okay guys, part 2 of our little tutorial here. We're going to focus on cutting and gluing in this one now. It's pretty self-explanatory, most of this. If you follow those instructions, and you should be very familiar with those instructions before you start, and know your pieces before we start cutting them out, that is probably the one tip I can give you, is make sure you understand the instructions. I'm just going to take you through a couple of these. Got my steel rule, got my retractable knife. Now before we start to cut, it's got to be sharp. These have got snap-off blades. Make sure you snap off regularly, otherwise if you're trying to cut through and your blade's blunt, then all it's going to do is drag through the cardboard or drag through the paper, and it's going to get messy. You're going to tear up your print, so you don't want to do that. So always keep a very sharp blade. Don't use the point of the knife when you're cutting. When you're bringing it back like this, don't use the point of the knife, okay, because that will give you burrs and a horrible edge as well. So try and keep your cut coming back at a low angle, a shallow angle like that, okay. Just have a good look at your instructions once again, but also to have a look at the piece that you're cutting out, so that you know exactly what has to happen. Sometimes before you cut parts out, there's a fold that needs to occur, or a couple of folds on capping layers. So you fold first, then you trim out. This red line in this particular case is indicating that we need to score this as well. Now scoring can be done afterwards, so that's fine, but just be familiar with exactly what it is you're cutting out, okay. Keep your blade vertical, don't have it coming in on an angle. These grey lines that are on the instructions, you are meant to cut down the middle of that grey line as a guide, okay. Several light passes instead of one big heavy pass will always give you a much neater cut and won't force the knife through anything. It's also a lot safer to do things that way as well. So we're just going to line them up right on the centre of that grey line. And a couple of shallow passes. Oh, only needed one shallow pass. It is only thin card, this stuff. Oh, there we go. And we'll take them off down the bottom there too, and the top. Now, this one, I'm going to score the length of this before we cut this one into its two pieces. Okay, so once again on the centre of that red line. And this time what we're going to do when we cut through, we're not actually going to cut through, I should say. We're just going to give it one very light pass all the way down. And that's all. Some people use the back of the knife if they need to for this thing. But as you can see, just scoring it once lightly, it hasn't gone all the way through. It's just given us a nice thin line through there. We're just going to cut that part in half though. And we're going to put that over to our builder's box. Now sometimes when you're cutting out these parts, you may lose the part name. Okay, pencil comes in very handy if you think you need to write on the back exactly what it is. Okay, so I know that that's a capping cover. It's a capping base. Okay, we'll put the fold back into it, and we'll put that over into our builder's box, and we'll get on with the next one. Okay. Nice and slow and steady. I've got a good cutting mat under here. If your cutting mat's a bit aged, a bit dinged up, you may want to look at replacing it. But just a couple of light passes with your blade as you come through. Watch the fingers. Just try and avoid getting any of the clear white. As well, I tend to cut on the inside of the line. Okay, like I said, I won't take you through the whole lot because that would be boring watching everything. What I will do though is just show you one little tip with some windows next. Okay, so once you've got all your parts cut out and prepped, sometimes they stick in the corners a little bit. Might just need a little bit of a nudge. There we go. Always lightly pass. Okay, into the builder's box. Put that one aside. Oh, come back. Okay, this time what we're going to do is we're going to cut out a window opening. Now I'll show you a little tip that I use for window openings. I've changed over to my smaller blade for this particular part. The simple reason is we can't see what we're doing if we've got the big blade in there. Now, normally you just go around all four, cut it out neatly, you'd be done. One little tip that I like to do is I come in to the corner on that angle, on that 45-degree angle, and just put a point in there and a small incision back. Okay, now that's going to do a couple of things. It's going to make sure that we get right into the corners when we're doing our cut out of the window later. It's also going to give us a start and a stop point every time for each line around the outside. So we're nice going to be guided by the marks that we've put in there now. So I'm going to keep the white on that, so cut against the white so I can see exactly what I'm doing. So a point goes back in and it's going to stop now when it hits that first line that you made before. Okay. And I just make sure that I can see the very edge of the white line so that I can cut just in from it, so there's no risk of me ending up with any white left on the left after I've cut out the panel. So it's a little bit longer than just going, 4 simple cuts and out pops your window. Some people may prefer to do it that way. I found windows can be quite fiddly and they can be quite messy, and it's the type of thing that if you do muck up one of the cuts and you've got some white left over, it's not that easy to go back and try and straighten up a window frame again. So I try and take a little bit more time with those windows where I can. Now that's left a little bit of a burr there, so I obviously need to change my blade. But as you can see, we've got none of the white portion left over. It's just a little bit ratty in there, but we can fix that up. That's probably a good example of what not to do when it comes to having a sharp blade after I've just finished speaking about it. Okay, so generally that's my technique for the windows anyway, is come into the corner here first, do a slight trim back that way, and that will give you a squarer corner as you come back out of it. Okay. Alright, just remember though, keep your knife vertical and nice shallow passes. 2 or 3 passes, better than one heavy pass. It's a lot safer to do it that way as well. Now, I've cut out and prepared these sliding doors. I'm just going to demonstrate the sliding doors, the wrap and glue portion of this technique, and show you how we use this this fabric glue here to do so. Okay. Okay, so we're about to do our first wrap and glue with our door covers onto the sliding door base layer here. Now a couple of things we're going to need. Just got a little bit of the fabric glue ready to go, paintbrush to apply that fabric glue. The other thing I've got is I've just got this miter box actually, but I'm just going to use the edges of it because we've got a couple of folds that we need to do here along this blue dotted line. Okay, now I've intentionally not cut out these pieces because I want that fold line, and I'm going to cut that as one long. Actually, we'll cut that as 2 pieces. Okay, so you can still see we've got the dots at each end so that we know exactly where we're folding. This nice edge that we've got across here is going to ensure that that stays nice and crisp. So we want to line up that blue dotted line right on our edge. Might come the other way. That's a bit easier. And we line him up there as well, just a blue dotted edge. Now it doesn't have to be a miter box or anything like that. You can use a block of wood as long, or a tile surface, or something that's going to be nice and square for you to do it against. But something solid. Okay, then we just come along that line and just pinch that, and then we can pick it up. We've got our line already. And we can just crease that the way it's meant to be creased. Okay. We'll do the same on the other side. and just gently press that together. When you're happy with the way it looks, we'll take it off and back to our ruler, and we'll give it its final trim up. Now with these doors, just pay attention as to which way they go. Sometimes it doesn't matter. Sometimes you can put them on, any way up, and it won't matter. In this particular case, they do have a rust pattern on there, and if you look at the pattern, it appears to me that it is going down, like rain has hit the door and drag some of the rust down with it as well. So we just want to make sure that when we put these on, not so much putting them onto the sliding doors now, but when we go to put them onto our building, that we have the doors the right way up. Okay, so just going to crease them across there, across there. There we go. And the same over the side. So blue dotted lines indicate a fold is needed. If you rush into it and you cut all your parts out, you'll lose your fold lines. So just have a really good read of those instructions before we begin. Slightly off on that one. Okay, red lines, on the other hand, indicate that a score has to happen. So we lightly cut the surface without cutting through. And again, we just trim through the center of any grey line for a cut line. All right. Now, one other important tip I can give you is always check the fit of everything before you go and glue anything in place, whether it's walls to roof or walls to walls, or even just these cover layers onto these sliding doors. We always want to test things to make sure, first of all, it's going to fit. Second of all, you might actually find out you've got the wrong part. That has happened to me on a few occasions where I've misidentified a part, or I've just simply been rushing, thought I knew the step that was coming next, and I've just grabbed the piece. Okay, so you can see those are just going to tuck around the edges. They don't tuck around the tops or anything like that. We do want to turn it over though and just make sure that all of that cardboard is covered completely. So I think the card I've used in this particular case is just a fraction on the thick side for these doors. And when it comes to wrapping, it's not quite there. Okay, that's all right, we'll work with it. So we just put a little bit of our fabric glue on. We don't need to cover the whole door. We're just going to come down the side, just like that. And on the other side, just enough for our wraparound to go over. Now, I always find it easier to place the card on top of the wrap, but we just need to make sure that we get it aligned first. So I generally stick one corner in first, one edge. Make sure you're right top and bottom before you go poking it down, that it is going to align properly, because this glue does go off very quickly, and if you haven't got it lined up where you want it, it can be a little bit difficult to move. So the good thing is it goes off quick. The bad thing is she goes off quick. Okay, now when it comes to doing the wraparound part, another little tip I like to do is I'll put it down on that edge and I'll roll the edge over first. Okay, and then I'll pull it towards myself just gently and pat it all down, pat every edge down. Okay, so I'm just rolling that edge on it, getting it over, and then we're going to pat it down. Okay, now there's a little bit of white showing there, but we will touch that up from the card. We will touch that up at the end, because you need to touch up the top and the bottom of the door anyway. We'll touch that up, or we could trim it. I'll be a bit reluctant to trim it because I want the two door sizes to remain the same. Put a bit more glue on this one. So this brush is a little bit dirty. It's been used for other purposes this morning. that won't affect what we're doing. So again, just line them up, try and keep the top and the bottom very even. And we just let it fall. Okay, need a bit more of that fabric glue. Just a little bit along the edge. If you're using things like glue stick, Bostik glue stick or Yoo-Hoo, or in the UK I think you use Pritt a lot, you know, you've got a bit more playtime with that. It does allow you enough time that you can, you know, maneuver your part around to get alignment. But this fabric glue sets off very, very quickly, which is one of the properties I like about it. And I'm prepared to align things. I'll spend more time aligning things before, just to get that good adhesion. I never have any of the parts sort of come loose later. We might just give these a little bit of a trim. Just the edge. And we want to be careful again not to come in on an angle, and we want to keep that quite low. Lightly scoring it. Okay. And we'll do the same on this one. PVA on the brush or fabric glue on the brush, just give it a quick rinse out in warm water. It should be good to go again. As long as you don't leave it too long. There we go. Okay, so there's our first little two. That's our sliding doors for our warehouse project. So that's the wrap and glue portion of it. Sometimes with wrap and glue, the instructions will have, or the piece will have an extra tab up here. We might see if we can find one of those to demonstrate later. And that would simply fold in on the other two surfaces that we haven't done yet, the other two edges. Obviously the doors don't need it. In that case, just have a good look at the parts and the printouts before you start. Sometimes they go in a sequence, like you might be required to fold in the short tabs before you fold the long ones over, if the pattern's different. I know when I built the little signal box, I folded the tabs in the wrong way before I realised, and glued them, before I realised that the longer ones needed to fold over later because they had the pattern that was required to be seen. So yeah, just familiarise yourself with all the parts again before you commence and before you glue. The old story is measure twice, cut once. I don't do it every time, unfortunately. That's what you need to look at doing. All right, back in a sec. Okay, so a quick update on where we're up to. We've got the walls together and the roof on at this stage. Just a couple of tips on building this particular one. I found for this big panel here with its cutouts on the front wall to attach the capping to the base layer. What I did, that's a little bit hard to show you now, but there's a capping wall ridge across the top where they want you to fold. I tacked the back of it over using the fabric glue. With the rest of it hanging free, I was actually able to get the quick grip glue and give it a light spray and then just allow it to fall naturally onto it, and managed to get it to line up perfectly. So no mucking around with lots of paint on it, glue on a brush with the fabric glue. It just went straight on that way, nice and easy. When it came to assembling both of the parts of the internal wall here and all four parts on the sides over here, once again I used the quick grip glue for that one too. Laid all the pieces down, gave them a quick spray. It's as simple as print down, spraying, assembling them in the right order, and they stuck fast straight away. So made that very, very quick. So no need for the Bostik on that one, and no need to use the fabric glue on that one. When it comes to attaching the roof across the top, needed to cheat a little bit, or chose to cheat a little bit, and just use a little bit of CA, just a little bit of super glue into these corners just to lock them down tight, just so I wouldn't have to keep pressure on them and wouldn't have to put a clamp on them. I really don't like doing that on cardboard structures if I can. All right, back soon.